Everything in audio is a compromise. And what I mean by this is, doesn't matter if I'm talking about mixing or I'm talking about the gear you own and you wish you owned this stuff because then you could make a better mix, according to you. Anything like this. It's a compromise every step of the way, and the pros do it too. All levels from the top to the bottom, you're compromising in some way. When it comes to mixing, if you're trying to put more bass in something, rather than make the bass louder and now everything else is lower, and then you got to make everything else a little louder, and now you got to make that louder, it's this never-ending cycle. What you learn is you have to make room for things in the mix. In order to hear the bass, something else that's in the way of it needs to get out of the way. So this is the concept of you can't just push all the faders up to the top and now it's a mix. You really have to realize there's always a compromise happening. When it comes to the gear, it's the same thing. There's always something you could do. Oh, if I just had this piece of gear, it'd be better. If I just got this set of headphones, then I could make great mixes. If my room was just, treated a little better, then it would be great. The truth is, some of that may be true, but that's not relevant to getting work done today and being on your way to being a professional. Because from the professional level on down, everybody is making a compromise in some fashion. When Andrew Sheps was on the road and he had to mix that Lady Gaga song, he put on the headphones, he made a mix, the first time he's ever done it, all in the box, and nobody said boo, and they loved it. So what I'm saying is, that's okay. He had to compromise because in order to be a professional and you need to get stuff done, you do it, and then you hope it works out. So you don't need the perfect setup. You don't need to say, I can't do it because I don't have the gear that I would typically use. You just compromise and make it work. The only people who could afford to say that they never compromise when it comes to audio are people who have no deadlines. They're not true professionals working for people who need things done now. If it's their own pet project, if it's something that they could take, when the moon is right, I'll get it done. It doesn't have to be now. The weather's not perfect. I can't sing today. There's too much. My allergies are bad. Like the people that got no deadlines at all, yeah, maybe you can afford to never compromise. And that's okay. Train like you're going to be a professional, even if you're not there yet. There's no point to play on easy mode and make everything take forever. So the goal is, to be a professional, you have to come up with the most ergonomic way to get things done. And I would typically, because I work hybrid, I always thought if I'm mixing through the summing, now in order to print stems, I got to go back, print each track separately. Well, by watching this video I watched today, Marc Daniel Nelson's, my mixing template on the Produce Like a Pro channel, one of the best videos I've seen in a long, long time. It was about a year ago he dropped it, but I watched it about 6 months ago or so, maybe 4 months, and then I kind of tuned out and I stopped watching it because it's long, it's very detailed, and my brain turned off a little bit as soon as I felt like my computer probably can't handle all the channels and all this processing that needs to happen to get all this stuff done. I tuned it out. So fast forward to now, I'm in a position where I have the ability to do it with a computer that could clearly handle that. So I'm like now looking at it where that didn't get in my way, and now all of a sudden I could actually hear what he's saying, and it makes so much sense. And I'm like, wow, I'm so amazed. I'm so happy that he put the time in to make that video, because I don't know if I've ever gotten more out of a video, because I'm going to use this implemented tomorrow in my mixing style. And I want to just share with you why I'm so excited. Because what I used to have to do to print stems would be extra time, tons of extra time. Whereas his way, he prints it while he's printing his main mix. Notice I say print, because a lot of people don't do offline bouncing. Most professionals don't do it. Some might, but most don't. In other words, you're printing by listening to the track go all the way through. And the reason, if you're using analog gear, you have no choice. In order for it to run through the gear, you got to print in real time. You have to let the thing play out while it records it back into the computer. That's called the print. So we're not just highlighting a track and hitting bounce, and then it just, takes a little less time to bounce it out. It's got to go through the gear, so it takes a little more time. But I used to always think that to make stems, now I got to play each thing, the group, solo the group, print it through the gear, one at a time. So the more stems, the longer it took. What a pain. the way he's working makes so much sense. He's basically, taking his tracks, sending them to buses so that they're like, that's the group processing. So in other words, it goes from like 7 keyboards to a keyboard bus, right? Then from the keyboard bus, the concept is he's sending to his summing, right? And he's also multing that to send to a digital version of anything he's doing in the summing. So that means the plugins that he's got on the digital side match whatever he's doing in the summing world to get as close as he can to the same sound. And that is how he prints stems simultaneously when he prints his mix through all the same analog summing. He's printing his analog summed mix and also printing a digital version of each stem that's as close to the analog sub mix as he can get. Now, notice what I said there. As close to the analog summed mix as he can get. This was like a light bulb moment for me because a lot of the mixing process I talk about is mental. I was very bogged down by this mental concept that I have to do one or the other, that somebody like me who clearly hears a difference between the analog summing and what it's doing and the digital stuff I get in the box only, I clearly hear a difference. I go from whatever's in the DAW to 24 stereo channels into a summing mixer. Then I go into the mix bus processing chain and back print it into the computer, all right? Sometimes I hit some inserts along the way. So in other words, when it hits the summing, I insert things like, it could be anything. Could be the color from the Neve channel. It could be a compressor. And I don't have a ton of outboard gear, but sometimes I'll put a Pultec in it. I'll put some Neve stuff in it. I like to put an 1176 on some things. But my point is, what he's doing makes so much amazing sense to me from the concept of he, who is somebody working at the pro level, is okay with his stuff. The digital versions of his stuff, they're clearly not the exact same thing as the summed versions. Like if you were to solo everything through the summing gear, it's not the same, but he's okay with it. And this is that light bulb moment for me where I was like, you know what? Life just isn't this black and white. It's not right and wrong. It's not analog. It's digital. Like this is better. This is wrong. It's not like that. What it is to be a professional. You do everything you can to get as close as you can, to make it as great as you can, but there's always a compromise. In order for him to get the stems printed at the same time as he's printing his mix, he has to compromise, and he's fine with it. And this is somebody I really respect, and if he's fine with it, working on the highest levels, and they're fine with it, then now I'm fine with it. And now I realize something. I realize I don't have to be one or the other. I used to think I need to learn how to be totally in the box so that I can get rid of all my analog summing, and then I don't need to do that. But now I'm thinking totally different. Now what I think is I actually need to be doing whatever the best I could do is, which is if I'm in my studio, I use my analog stuff. And I also print the stems digitally so that if I'm not in the studio, I can make tweaks and changes just like he can. And if I'm not around my studio, I'll be comfortable enough working in the box to be able to get stuff done to the best of my ability that way. So now I've all of a sudden found the gray area, and I have to thank him for it, because what an amazing gray area this is. This concept of he clearly loves analog summing more than digital mixing in the box. And he doesn't just love it because he's being, his mind is tricking him. He's trusting his ears, and his ears are telling him it's better, just like mine. So hearing him say this is so rewarding in a way. Now I really understand that it's not about one or the other. It's totally about you do the best you can do given your circumstances. And sometimes there's a compromise. Sometimes you got to be okay with that, because having those stems printed simultaneously, so meaning he's running to his analog summing and putting stuff all together there, but because he's sending the stuff to a digital version, because it's being multed to digital versions, he's also able to then send off to the client or the film studio or anybody this total package that a professional would be able to send off, and it wouldn't take them any more time because the time and effort and thought went into how to do it. This is something I mentioned before when I said be smarter. He is totally come up with the way to do this in the most professional way possible and still get the best of both worlds. So it just really opens my eyes. If he's okay with the digital side of it when he's not around, when he's not able to do it, if he's okay with it then I understand you can make stuff like that sound great enough to be okay with it for me too. Like, I sort of really needed this to see it's not one-sided, one way or the other, and anything less would be somehow doing less. It's not. What it is doing the most you can do given your circumstances and given where you are. That's why anybody who doesn't have the perfect setup got no excuse. We're all compromising all the time. Just realize you could do the best you can with what you have, and that will be good enough. I want you to realize that. There's no magic anything that's going to take you where you need to go. It's all within you. You got this. And it's way more important that you do the work, that you show up, that you deliver the product, that you meet the deadline. It's way more important you do all of that than that you avoid the compromise. Because once you realize it's happening on all levels, you won't have that excuse. All right, I hope you dug it. Do me a favor, throw it in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. I'm going to link to that other video, all right? Just remember that. You got this. I'm also going to go into detail on what he did on his video because it's a very in-depth video and I could do something to break it down a little bit. So in case you got questions about it, watch it. Let me know. Throw it in the comments. I'll try to answer those questions for you, all right? Take it easy. Talk to you guys soon. You got this.